No.
They don't really tell you?
No. The only censoring I get is from Stacy. That's the only censoring I get.
What do you think about Julian Assange's show on?
It's excellent.
Oh, Julian. Oh, yes. Yes, Julian. Well, the Julian Assange show is fantastic. Have you seen the Julian Assange show? It's fantastic, right? Okay, they're going to have 10 weeks, and it's fantastic, and he's doing a great job. And
it's real reporting.
It's journalism. It's revelatory. He's filling the vacuum that you would hope the New York Times would have filled long ago. But look, the New York Times, they didn't break the spying story before the Bush election, right? They held on the story for national security. They did things that are unconscionable. That people who started that newspaper are rolling in the grave. That New York Times is a pathetic excuse for a newspaper, and we're also getting more views on YouTube than Julian Assange.
Hey, what about Utah? Making silver a legal tender, is that like a big move? I mean, is that?
Oh, there's Alex Schaefer, ladies and gentlemen. Legal tender. Yeah, that's right. There are states all across America that are making gold and silver, or silver legal tender. And ultimately, around the world, gold is becoming a reserve currency. And that trend is happening. So more and more, as the US dollar is losing its place as reserve currency, you've got bilateral currency going on with Russia, China, Brazil, Iran. And these countries are doing deals outside of the dollar matrix. They want to get out of the dollar matrix. India recently said, we don't want to be in the dollar, not because it's a crap currency, but because you don't like your foreign policy. So that's an amazing admission for, ally, quote unquote, India, saying, we don't like your foreign policy, therefore we don't like your currency. So more and more people are using oil. Of course, Saddam Hussein was going to convert his oil business from dollars to euros. Shortly thereafter, he was swinging from a rope. Ahmadinejad, of course, wanted to oil bourse in Iran. Suddenly, there's all kinds of situations brewing there, geopolitical tension. So, the dollar is really lubricates the U.S. hegemony. And, the U.S. obviously wants to keep it that way. And the rest of the world wants to get out of the dollar because they don't see the benefit of it anymore. And this is why so many central banks around the world and people are buying gold and silver. Look, if you had gold in Iceland, you would have survived. People who have gold in Greece are survivors. People who have gold during the Russian ruble crisis, they're survivors. In Ireland, survivors, it's a survival play. And you got to think about it in those terms. I mean, when the shit hits the fan, do you want a worthless piece of paper on the ground, or do you want something that is recognized as money for 5,000 years? It's just pure common sense. The propaganda coming out now from Warren Buffett says, we would never own gold with his butt-fucking partner, Charlie Munger. Well, gold has outperformed Berkshire Hathaway by 500% over the past 10 years. Silver has done better. Who would you rather buy? Berkshire Hathaway? Bill Gates coming out against gold? The gold has trounced Microsoft stock 500% over the past 10 years. These guys are just, gold and silver. So, those trends are in place, they're still in place, and you can still buy at these cheap prices. Well, you still can. Meanwhile, what did the co-founder of Facebook announce today? Oh, he's renouncing his U.S. citizenship.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
I like that reaction. Let's do another take of that. But everyone this time say what?
What?
Wait for my cue. Damn it. This is Hollywood. Okay, here we go. Ready? And everyone's renouncing gold and silver. And what does it tell you about the state of the world when people don't want these worthless pieces of paper anymore? They just want gold and silver because otherwise it's got no security whatsoever. And it's got all the collateral risk. I don't know if you saw it or not, but today in the news, the co-founder of Facebook renounces U.S. citizenship.
What?
That's what I said. And the fact is that the number of people in America who are renouncing their U.S. citizenship is skyrocketing. It's up 200-300% year over year. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We know from our own experience that having the U.S. passport when we're traveling in the Mideast, Asia, and other places, it's really a toxic passport to have. It's not like people welcome you with open arms and sing kumbaya, except in Dubai where we made everybody there billionaires. And they really do love the Americans. They're like, thank you for the Iraq war. 5 years ago, no Maseratis. Today, everyone had Maserati. Thank you so much. So, you know, it's got problems. It's a problematic piece of paper. So anyway, people are renouncing. And, you know, I mentioned this on Alex Jones. Alex Jones. You know, I mentioned that to Alex Jones, who I've been on his show many times. And, of course, the position that he takes down there in Keep It Weird, Austin, Texas, is, you know, I'm going to stay and fight. I'm going to stay and fight. You know. Alex Jones. Max! Break it down for us, Max. In other words, at the rate of the contract, wait a minute, get into the break. When we come back from the break, explain what you just said. You know, garden in a can.
What about the ants?
My pet chipmunk has autism. That's clearly from the garden soul. No, but Alex Jones, of course, again, somebody who is filling in for this huge vacuum that was left when mainstream media turned its back on reporting the news and just became a shell for paper-pushing fucking Jamie Dimon scum fucking cunt. But, no, where was that? The, Alex Jones. He says he's going to stay and fight. Now, the thing is that I'm not sure that's the best strategy, to tell you the truth, to stay and fight. I think there's a word for that. It's called police-assisted suicide. That's not me. Liberty! He died free. Wow. Speaking of dying free, you know, we're working on a story about a broker. See if we can, this will work. This works in Europe. We'll see if this works here. A broker who was working at Morgan Stanley in the South Towers, 9/11, after the North Towers collapsed, who quickly realized that he could make a killing trading airline put options. And we know that from the records, from the official government report, that $5 million was left in the Alex Brown account in Baltimore, Maryland, from some broker trading airline put options that was never collected. So this guy had a choice: make money or be free. Anyway, he obviously somebody that day chose to go the way of the financial jihadi, basically financial terrorism. And I started this evening talking about it, and that's what I firmly believe. You're talking about a mentality of financial professionals that are psychotic. They're deranged. You know, there's a great editorial in the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago called "Lessons from the Brain-Damaged Investor." And this was a whole editorial about why people with slight brain damage make great investors and money managers. Why? Because they lack empathy. They had absolutely no ability to empathize, to feel the consequences of their actions. Therefore, that makes them good money managers. And subsequent to that, you learn that this is becoming a recruiting tool for people on Wall Street to determine how much brain damage we can get away with when hiring these people. And they bring them in, and they behave in these psychotic manner. They're given algorithmic tools. 86% of all the trading on the New York Stock Exchange is now computer to computer. It's not even humans anymore. So they just program computers to scout markets, to derange markets, to destabilize markets, and collect a fee on this, on the destruction. So it's a scorched earth policy of bankers against us. You know, and we're not doing great at the moment, but I think, you know, now that we see what's happening with Morgan, there's some good development. Okay, sir, yes, back there.
Yeah, for political solutions, and you've talked to a lot of different individuals, I got a couple of questions. First of all, with political solutions of who you'd like to vote for president, there's Ron Paul on one side, and there's Obama and Romney, which is not much of a choice. And then, would you bring back Glass-Steagall? That's the first question.
Well, what about Stacey Herbert for president?
Well, yeah.
No, well, I think that doesn't really matter who the president is at all. You know?
Well, no. Here's my question,
Yeah.
okay? You've got the Alex Jones side
Yeah.
that will say, go with Ron Paul,
Yeah.
and go with the Austrian economics,
Mhm.
and put it in the Fed.
Right.
And then you got the Webster Tarpley side that says you have to nationalize the Fed. What do you want?
Mhm.
That's what I want.
Well, both of those ideas are fine. But you know, I mean, Ron Paul is a guy who he could do the job.
Oh, sure.
And based on what he's been saying, he understands that you don't want the Federal Reserve Bank managing your money when you can have the Treasury do a better job and not charge interest to yourself. You know, you don't need that. The Fed is, Benjamin Franklin said one of the biggest reasons America declared independence from the British monarchy was to get away from the Bank of England. That was, enslaving the colonies with the same shit that the Fed enslaves us today. So we need a new Declaration of Independence. We don't need another hero. We don't need another Romney, private equity guy who's stepping in the White House to cut deals. What's he gonna do? A leverage buyout of the West Wing and sell to the Chinese for lunch money? Who is this guy? Romney. We don't need Romney.
I agree with you, but what do you know about Webster Tarpley's solution to nationalizing it with dirigism in the American school versus Austrian economics? That's my question.
Well, there's some subtleties involved there. I'm not sure it's a suitable topic for a group discussion, but as far as nationalizing, these institutions, what about having nationalized all the banks in 2008, when they obviously got in over their head, and to fire all the people running those banks, create a few new banks, then say, okay, you're a newly chartered bank, put the deposits there, and have competition. What about free market competition as a way to run an economy? Because we don't have that now. We don't have free market competition. We've got a group of guys in Washington who set interest rates at 0%, and they don't have a competition for those funds at all. It's based purely on crony capitalism. It's based purely on the kleptocracy. They don't actually earn those handouts. Hank Paulson went to Congress in 2008 and said, either you give us $750 billion, we're going to crash the economy. Congress said, wait a minute, we need to think about it. They crashed the market the next day using high-frequency trading, algorithmic trading, program trading. Then they passed it. So that's putting the market volatility in the service of passing laws that favor the tapeworms and hurt everybody else. So we saw that in 2008. Now, as far as contrasting that with the Austrian School of Economics, that's something I'll discuss with you privately after this session, because you need to have some grounding in both. Austrian School of Economics have a conversation about that. So I'm not going to take that tangent at this time, unless you really want me to. And even if you really want me to, I'm not going to do it. Yes, sir.
Any whisper of a chance that Corzine might go down for MF Global? From your connections, are you hearing anything at all?
No, because he's a made man. He's a made man. Corzine is a made man, and he could whack, a nun in a bus and put a knife in her back, and he'd be blowing kisses from this administration and giving a lollipop and a pat in the head and said, "Good job, John Corzine."
Big Obama contributor.
Yeah, and he's now bundling money for Obama, and it's a mafia model, and he's a made man, so you can't touch him.
What's
Someone has to go down for that.
Well, there's nothing slowing them down at the moment. There's not a single thing slowing the freight train of fraud down, except themselves. Ultimately, they're going to fall on themselves. They're going to trip over themselves, and there's only. And we see it now. I mean, Morgan's admission today of this $2 billion loss is just after all this pigeon-chested rah-rah speech about why we're America's bank and why we are risk and everything is hedged. It shows that things are spinning out of control. So it's going to spin out of control, and it's going to be chaotic. And again, gold and silver is sitting there, and it has value. Is it what the price is? Not as important as will somebody take this in exchange for something like food. That's the question you got to ask yourself. Not what's the absolute price, but is it money? Well, it's money. It's real money, not like paper money, which is an abstraction of money. It's not in itself. It has no inherent value. It's a confidence game. It's a Bernie Madoff, Ponzi nightmare writ large on our souls by paper printing. Yes, sir. No, you already talked to me already. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The last.
Right here.
Yes, sir.
To piggyback off his question, which
dichotomy between a free market, Ron Paul libertarian idea, and then to bring it back to the main sort of talking head that's touting it, the Webster Tarpley idea of a new deal, without even getting into the semantics of what he's saying. I want to know this, because I don't know where I stand personally with it as FDR would nowadays. How do you feel about what FDR did then as it would apply for right now? Basically, a new deal, which involved government spending. And I understand that we're in debt and we don't want to keep spending, but we need a sort of, if the corporations or private entities won't step up and do this sort of economic stimulus that we all need, whether it be plaquing our houses with solar panels, or whatever that new economic model is that we can even turn on and invest in day trading, because I'll play that market too.
Okay.
How do we inspire the next economic model, whether it comes from a free market or from an FDR type new deal where we can profit?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Absolutely. No, let me ask you a question. So, well, I think the FDR model, people think that we've had the big collapse, which we haven't. We've had a preview of the big collapse. The big collapse is still yet to come.
Yes.
And then there will have to be some New Deal-esque type of situation. But here's the thing: it won't be determined in Washington. It'll be determined in like Europe, because the World Bank and the IMF and these groups are getting together. They're preparing for this, and they are going to issue a global currency. And guess what? You're going to pay state, local, federal, and world tax.
Yes.
Because they're going to say your dollars are now worth 10% of what they were. And there's a gold-backed component to this new world currency. You got to pay taxes, just like you paid taxes when they introduced the Fed in 1913. And your purchasing power will remain roughly cut in half. And the 100 million or 150 million people in America who are living at or below the poverty line will increase dramatically. And up until that point, all these civil rights will have been systematically destroyed, so you have no recourse. And it'll be back to feudalism, basically. It's a feudal era. We're heading back to. But let me continue, if I might, because after all, I do have the microphone. Back in the Middle Ages, when the lords and kings were running the economy around Europe, they were very happy to have indentured servants working the land. It wasn't the only thing that happened that changed that model was the Black Plague, which wiped out half the population, and suddenly lords had to pay for work and to work their land. That was the beginning of the so-called middle class. But the aristocrats have always dreamed of going back pre-Black Plague. Black Plague really fucked them up. So they want to go back to that model where you were working, for indentured servitude, and like student debts are a good example of this. There's no recourse for student debts. You can't get them off you declare bankruptcy, you still owe student debts. I just read today that somebody who's living on retirement income, their Social Security paycheck is being garnished. The woman's 76 years old, and her student debt from 40 years ago or something is being garnished at her Social Security. Okay? That's unconscionable. That's not an economy. That's indentured servitude. That's back to Dickensian people in the street, or read the history of Berlin during the Weimar Republic, where they had different streets for different sexual peccadillos. You had your mother-daughter act, you had dogs, you had mother, daughter, and dogs. It's like an incredible panoply of sexual depravity is the only way that people could survive, because the inflation rate went to hundreds and hundreds of percentile, and the famous image of a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy a salami sandwich. And that's what happens, and that's the risk. Currency collapsed because they're printing too much of it, because they refuse to admit that they're human